Hello everyone, it's me, Bricks and Kyber, and I'm back to talk about the Tales of the Jedi. If you didn't know, I made a video a couple weeks back about my excitement for the show, and oh wow, that video did really well. Thank you so much for that, guys. But now that the show is out, I have to ask the big question: did it disappoint? Alright, so the Tales of the Jedi released sometime at the end of October. Basically what it was 6 short episodes in the Clone Wars / Bad Batch style of animation, 3 about Count Dooku and 3 about Ahsoka Tano, the favorite character of Dave Filoni, so of course she had to get 3 episodes, but more about that later. Okay, so now I will cover these episodes with no spoilers, and I'll move on to the spoiler category afterwards. Okay, so the first episode was about Ahsoka getting born, which, yeah, we totally needed to see Ahsoka's, origin story. This was a cute episode. Ahsoka as a baby was very cute, blah blah blah. I won't go into spoilers yet, so this first episode was pretty neat. I would give it probably a 7 out of 10. It was cute, that's it. Now, the second episode was the first Dooku episode with young Qui-Gon. This was the episode that took place the earliest on the Star Wars timeline. This one I really liked, actually. I really liked young Qui-Gon and young Dooku interacting. Dooku is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, so it was really great to see him. And yeah, so no spoilers, this one was great, 8 out of 10. Moving on, next one was with Mace Windu and Count Dooku. This episode I really liked, but the worst part was the length. I think it was way too short, as Mace Windu and Count Dooku are such different characters that I think if they've had more time to interact with each other's and their different ideologies had to coincide, I think that would be far more interesting to see than what we actually got. But still, great episode, 8 out of 10. Then we have episode 4, best episode of the series, though I have a few problems with it. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Basically, I can't cover that episode without any spoilers, so it was a 9 out of 10, but it was the last Dooku episode and showed his turn to the dark side and how he reacted to Qui-Gon's death. Then we have episode 6. This was an Ahsoka episode and her training. This one was very, very nice, and this was probably the most filler episode, but it actually made me really emotional, and I really liked the ending of that episode. And lastly, we have episode 6, which is just Filoni decanonizing a novel, as he loves to do that. And episode 6 was pretty decent. I would give it an 8 out of 10, maybe a 9, because I really liked Ahsoka being at Padme's funeral. And yeah, so those were my non-spoiler thoughts on the episodes. Now, warning, spoilers. If you want to watch the show, go watch it quickly, come back here, and then I can tell you my full thoughts. Okay, you've done watching the show? That's great. Let's move on. Okay, so the first episode's with spoilers now. I think it was, honestly, I mean, it's the most unnecessary thing I might have watched, to be honest. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it was clearly just Dave Filoni trying to find an excuse to write an Ahsoka story, and that was her being born and taken captive by that tiger. But what I really liked is baby Ahsoka reacting with the tiger, you know, showing that, her connection with the Force and her, innocence being the thing that saves her, which was really nice. Though unrealistic, but it was nice, because this is open for interpretation, which is something that I love about this show. This show has almost no dialogue at all. It is visual storytelling to the max, and I love that so much, as my big problem with most of recent Star Wars content is that it just tells you stuff. Exposition, exposition, exposition. This show, visual language all the way, and I love that, especially when it's done in this beautiful animation. But I'll talk more about the visual language a bit later in the Dooku episodes. That's where it's utilized so well, but that doesn't mean that this episode doesn't use visual language well. As I said, the scene between baby Ahsoka and the tiger looked visually stunning as well. Fun episode, 7 out of 10, I think 6. Probably it's a 6 out of 10, but I give it a 7 because I'm nice. Anyway, the first Dooku episode with Qui-Gon. Okay, so this one takes place the earliest from all of the episodes, as I've stated before, and it tells the story of Qui-Gon and Dooku, saving a senator's son, and it shows Dooku's ideology of him, caring not for the Republic, because he doesn't serve the Republic, he serves peace. And I think this is a great, his first steps into darkness, showing that, oh yeah, he isn't with the Republic. He's only with the Republic if the Republic is like with his ideologies, which is of course why he leaves for the Separatists later, as he feels the Republic has failed and they just use Jedi as pawns, which is something that he begins to discover in this episode. Also, Liam Neeson's son voiced Qui-Gon Jinn in this episode. I really liked Qui-Gon. I think we should definitely, if there is a season 2, we should get more Qui-Gon and Dooku, as I think their bond is still so interesting, and we only got one episode between the two of them. Qui-Gon only reappears in episode 4, but I'm really happy that we got at least one story, as even Dooku Jedi Lost didn't have too much Qui-Gon and Dooku, but this show did have that, so I'm very thankful for that. I think it was really nice to see them, and also the design of the planet was really cool, with those like creepy and dark trees, and the entire atmosphere was very well set, and it was also very like dark, especially for like 7 and up, but we'll get into the dark stuff more in episode 4. But as I've said, and also the visual language, as I've said in this show, phenomenal. This episode especially, I loved the cinematography in this episode and how it used lighting on Dooku. What I mean by that is basically that Dooku is mostly framed in different like shadows and dark shades of blue to show like his light fading inside of him, and I just really love stuff like that when the writers don't have to use any dialogue to explain such things. So that's just something that I really loved in this episode, and I would give it like an 8 out of 10. Honestly, 8.5 out of 10. A really strong episode for Count Dooku, especially if people thought that his character was bland. Watching this episode alone just makes him a 10 times better character than he was ever. Okay, now episode 3 is really interesting. At first, I actually thought that it was quite short, and I felt as if it was the weakest episode out of all the 6 episodes, but looking back on it, I must say this is another 8 out of 10. It really shows well Dooku just having his beliefs in the Jedi failing, as he gets sent on a mission with Mace Windu, and Mace Windu is like the polar opposite of Dooku, as Mace Windu just serves the Jedi. He just thinks that whatever they do, they are the right ones, while Dooku sees their flaws, as Dooku is fighting, as I've said before, to keep peace between everyone. He's a protector of peace for everyone, while Mace Windu is just a servant for the Republic, and he does whatever the Republic tells him to do. So 2 very different ideologies, and I just thought that was really nice to see. But my only problem with the episode, as I said in the beginning, was the length, as I feel these characters have so much to talk about and disagree on, and maybe something to agree on. I just think that if we were to get like more episodes between these 2 characters, it would be very interesting, as their dynamic was really nice to see and it was really engaging, and I just want more. Also, Raxus came back in this episode, a plan from the Bad Batch. I just liked how a separatist planet was in this episode, and Dooku was protecting the separatist planet as a Jedi, but soon when he will join the separatists, he will be fighting for that planet from the side of the separatists. So it's just nice. But yeah, 8 out of 10. And finally, let's move on to episode 4. This is the one with Yaddle, and Liam Neeson comes back as Qui-Gon. This is also the episode that takes place in the same time as The Phantom Menace. Basically, why this is controversial is because in the screenplay, Dooku Jedi Lost, it says that Dooku has left the Jedi Order about 10 years before The Phantom Menace. So this shocked many fans that, wow, Dooku is still in the Jedi Temple. But the sneaky thing they did over here is they never mentioned that Dooku is still a part of the Order. So what I think they did here is simply have Dooku visit the Jedi Temple from time to time. And this makes sense as well. Dooku is a rich guy, as we know from Dooku Jedi Lost. He has probably the time to visit once in a while the Jedi Temple. And makes sense why. I mean, he probably wants to visit his pupil, Qui-Gon. So when Qui-Gon is here, he obviously wants to visit him. But that's not the point. I mean, I'm just explaining this for people who thought that this book was retconned. I thought that at the beginning, but after thinking about it, they actually didn't retcon anything. So yeah, as I said before, this episode takes place at the same time as The Phantom Menace, and what's really cool is that we actually see Dooku deleting Kamino of the Jedi Archives. Small detail, I just really enjoyed that. It ties nicely into Attack of the Clones. Yes, very fan-servicey, but it doesn't ruin the episode, so I enjoyed it. But what about the episode itself? Well, damn it, if this was longer, this would have been some of the best Star Wars animated content that we have gotten since like the Clone Wars ended. Because oh boy, The plot of this episode is basically that Dooku, after learning that Qui-Gon is dead, he just blames it on the Jedi, as he just sees now how they've become just simply pawns of the Republic, and his pupil is just dead because of them, because they've become just soldiers for the Republic instead of actual protectors of peace. So he's fed up with them, and this is his final stroke, and he fully becomes a Sith and joins Sidious. He even meets up with Sidious, but Yaddle actually follows him. And Yaddle finds out that he is working with Sidious, and she tries to bring him back, but Dooku is already lost, so he fights her, and eventually he kills her, showing his commitment to the dark side of the Force. Brilliant storytelling, and what I loved the most is the lighting in this episode. Dooku is always framed here in the shadows. He is not at all in the light. Even when he fights with Yaddle, when Yaddle like lifts up the door that was supposed to crush her, it tries to like show light onto Dooku and onto Sidious, but then the door quickly closes and Dooku is yet again in the dark, showing that he's going to stay in the dark side forever as he kills Yaddle. But my other favorite scene was a scene with Dooku next to a tree where he basically reminisces about bringing Qui-Gon to that tree and teaching him there, just showing his guilt but also his anger and frustration towards the Jedi. So in the end, this was a phenomenal episode, as I've said. 9.5 out of 10. I might give it a 10 actually, but with what we got here, extremely good. You know, actually, let's give it just a 10 out of 10 because it really deserves it. And it didn't decanonize a novel, which I am so thankful for, Dave Filoni, that you didn't decanonize Jedi Dooku Lost. Okay, so that was the last Dooku episode. All in all, the Dooku side of the show was far better than the Ahsoka side, and I definitely favored the Dooku stuff way more. Even though the Ahsoka side had my favorite characters, Anakin and Obi-Wan. Which, let's get to them. Episode 5. Episode 5 is mostly just showing how Ahsoka was trained by Anakin and Anakin's method of training, which is her like fighting against clones, which is something so genius, as that's why she was like able to defend herself during Order 66 so well. It's because Anakin actually trained Ahsoka to fight against clones, which is something that Anakin would do, so it's very in his character, and it's something that just makes Siege of Mandalore hurt more, as this time it's like Ahsoka's training is coming back, but in the worst way possible because the clones have turned against her. And they even do a little montage at the end of this episode where Anakin is still training Ahsoka until it gets to like Siege of Mandalore, where she has to use that like training for real. I loved it in this episode so much. And yeah, I think this was just like an episode of Clone Wars basically. Episode 5 was just an episode of Clone Wars, and I loved seeing Anakin and Obi-Wan in their Clone Wars armor so much. Those are my favorite outfits for those characters, and seeing them in the new animation was really great. And also Obi-Wan had like his episode to her, and Anakin had like his short to her too, and it was just fun to see those characters like that at the very early stages of Clone Wars, which is why I really want a season 2, to see those characters in the early stages of the Clone Wars, as that's something that the Clone Wars brushed off a bit with their like redesigns. I feel like if we get more of that stuff, it would be really nice, so please Disney. And finally, we have the last episode with Ahsoka. This one was really nice. This one of course decanonized another book, the Ahsoka novel, as I've said before. The Inquisitor fight was very short, which is something that I didn't like, but what I did like was how the Inquisitor looked. His design is so creepy and fits so well for like a being that uses the dark side. I just wish it was used somewhere else. For example, like for a new Sith character, some ancient Sith, because like an Inquisitor dies in 3 seconds. Really? That's where you use this awesome design? But yeah, this episode was really nice. It was nice to see that Ahsoka actually attended Padme's funeral, and she talked to Bail Organa, which is how she joined the rebellion, and she had contact with the rebellion, which is something that was never really explained well in Rebels, but now we know that, so it's nice. And yeah, this episode was just really short. It was basically like the Ahsoka novel in 2 seconds. I mean 17 minutes, okay, fine, but yeah. It was also like a great epilogue to Clone Wars. That's what it felt to me like, because basically it takes place seconds after the Siege of Mandalore. As you can see, Rex in the Y-Wing and Ahsoka going towards him. So it's after, of course, they bury the clones in the Siege of Mandalore. So yeah, this was just like an epilogue to Clone Wars and a really nice way to finish off the series. Okay, so in conclusion, did the Tales of the Jedi disappoint? Absolutely not. I was really astounded by it, and I found it really entertaining, and I definitely recommend it, as it's very short. It's like less than an hour and a half if you watch it all together. I watched it with my girlfriend. It was really a fun experience for the both of us, and yeah, it's just great to, you know, see those characters from different sides. Of course, the Ahsoka story we knew already, and the Ahsoka stuff wasn't really anything groundbreaking and new, especially except I guess the last episode. If you haven't read any Star Wars book, that the last episode was nice to see. But yeah, but the Dooku stuff though was mostly new and really welcoming to see. So I really hope we get a season 2, as I want to get more stories and about different Jedis. I really hope they do this with different time periods. For example, like after the sequel trilogy, maybe we'll get us 3 episodes about Finn, or maybe the High Republic, first time in animation form. That would be great. Or the Old Republic, about maybe like Revan and things like that. I mean, that's something that I would love to see this show explore, as I think this was mostly a testing ground for them to see how we will react, and I think the audience reacted very well, and I want to see more. So I hope next year or in 2 years we'll get a season 2 with like maybe 10 episodes about different Jedi, and they'll be 20 minutes long and in different time periods. That's something that I want to see, as I think this show has great potential. Maybe we'll explore some very obscure Jedi like Plo Koon or Ki-Adi-Mundi. I really don't know, but I really hope so. So that was my opinions on the Tales of Jedi. I would give the show an 8 out of 10. An 8.5 actually. Not a 9, but an 8.5. So yeah, thank you for watching, like, subscribe and share, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye!